the Clean Energy Alliance Board of Directors, and I see we have Kaylin virtual today.
Yes, thank you, Chair. I will call roll. Board Member Figueroa,
Present.
Board Member Nunez,
I'm present, but I can't get my mic off.
Board Member Becker.
I'm here. Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you. Board Member Spellich,
Here.
Board Member Bhat Patel,
Here.
and Chair Melendez.
Present. Thank
I will
you.
note, as of now, Vice Chair Garcia is absent.
Thank you. Now please rise for the Pledge of Allegiance. Ready, begin. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you. We will move along to board comments and announcements from the board. Do we have any updates? Anything anyone would like to share? Okay, seeing none. We'll go ahead and open it up for public comment. Do we have any public commenters at this time?
I did not receive any written correspondence, and I will defer to our legal counsel for any in-person speakers.
Thank you, Johanna. I don't believe we have any speakers.
We do have a speaker.
Oh, then please.
Oh, I'm sorry. That's for Agenda 8.
Okay, we will wait on them. And now we'll have the approval of the minutes.
So moved.
Thank you. Do we have a second? Second. Please vote.
Board Member Figueroa,
Aye.
Board Member Nunez,
Hi.
Board Member Becker,
Yes.
Board Member Spellich,
Aye.
Board Member Bhat Patel,
Aye.
Chair Melendez.
Aye. Thank you. Next, we have item 1, which is our CEO report. Or I'm sorry, excuse me, the treasurer's report for 2025. Consent calendar item 2, community needs survey, item 3, amendments to professional services agreement, and number 4, power purchase agreement with Deer Creek Solar. Those are all consent. Do I have a motion to approve the consent calendar? And do we have any public comments at this time?
No, Madam
Okay,
Chair.
we just had the one on 8. Okay,
I
a
move
motion
approval.
for,
Move approval. of
thank
the-
you, Member Spellich, and a second.
I'll second.
Okay. Thank you, Nunez. Now we will go ahead and vote.
Board Member Figueroa,
Aye.
Board Member Nunez,
Aye.
Board Member Becker,
Yes.
Board Member Spellich,
Aye.
Board Member Bhat Patel,
Aye.
Chair Melendez.
Aye. Thank you. Consent calendar passes. And next we have a public hearing, which is item 6, our battery. I'm
Excuse me,
sorry.
we have the CEO report first.
Oh my gosh, I missed that. I'm so sorry, Greg. Please go ahead.
Thank you, Chair, members of the board. This is just a brief update, CEO report. It's part of the staff report of the package. Just an update on the most recent enrollment. We have the statistics there. We've now completed our enrollment of NEM customers for Vista and Oceanside. And here you can see the breakdown of those customers by our product offerings, Clean Impact Plus, or sorry, this is just the opt-downs and opt-ups and opt-outs. We're at about 94.2% participation rate among both of the two recently enrolled cities, with a total of 6,546 opt-outs out of 113,370 eligible accounts. Oops. This shows the statistics for each member agency by product, Clean Impact Plus, and the Green Impact 100%. As you can see, we're up to 252,086 of our default product. 739 customers are opted down to the 50% renewable, and we have now over 1,000 Green Impact customers. Just a brief update on the Solar Plus program. This shows the enrollment by member agency, or sorry, by the member agency. And we are happy to announce that the channel partners that were approved under agreements, amendments to our Solar Plus program in January, we have our first enrolled customer under a channel partner, and they are now represented in this group. We continue to enroll channel partners as providers for this program, and it's exciting to see that they're starting to actively market in the community and get other folks involved. So that's good news there. Although it's not in the presentation, I skipped ahead of myself. This just shows some of the community events that we participated in last month. The Grays at the Fields, Dr. Bronner's, and Oceanside Earth Day. And we have one event, Equality Awards, coming up this tomorrow, actually. And then, as I mentioned, before we move on to the next item, which is a public hearing, in the staff report, there was an update on recruitment, and I'm happy to report that we have filled all the positions. Recalling there were 5 positions. One is a replacement position for our board clerk, executive assistant, and the other 4 positions have been filled. Their first day is next Monday, and we will introduce them all to you at the board meeting in June. So that's good to report that we were successful in those recruitments. And that completes the report.
Thank you, Greg. Do we have any questions for CEO? Really appreciate these updates. Thank you. That is the report for our CEO's report. And now we get to go to our public hearing, item 6.
Thank you, Chair Melendez, Board, Rob Howard, Clean Energy Alliance. I want to introduce item 6, the Battery Bonus and Battery Bonus Connect offering. A background on the Battery Bonus program. We understand that in our service territory, numerous customers have installed solar systems on their homes, but yet have no battery backup. And batteries are important for several reasons. One is they provide the backup power. They also provide time of use optimization to allow the customer to discharge from the battery during some of the highest electrical rates. It increases the use of renewable energy from their solar system, and it supports our grid stability. The program, the Battery Bonus Program, the Battery Bonus Program, remember we have 2 parts to the program. Participate Energy has been selected to administer the Battery Bonus Program. The Battery Bonus Program provides battery retrofits for those Clean Energy Alliance customers with existing solar systems and don't have a battery. So the program will be integrated with the current Solar Plus program, which is being currently administered by Clean Energy Alliance. Administered by Participate Energy. And just like Solar Plus, this program has no upfront cost or credit checks required to participate in the program. The rates that we'll be asking for approval from the board is the customer fees for the batteries will range from $50 to $115 per battery per month. And those rates that range, they're based on several factors: installation complexity, installer cost, and customer preference. As you'll see on the chart, each of those 3 major categories has several reasons why the range would be different, like if they need a main panel upgrade, other items like including the equipment that they may select, and if they need additional batteries and things like that. And I'm open for questions if you have questions. The second part to the program is what we call Battery Bonus Connect. Battery Bonus Connect is specifically for those customers that are income qualified. And the Battery Bonus Connect portion of the program is going to be Haven Energy Services Incorporated was selected to administer the Battery Bonus Connect program. So the program benefits the income qualified customers, including Fair customers. program is funded by the Self-Generation Incentive Program, commonly known as the SCHIP program. Haven's professional services agreement provides battery retrofits at no cost to CEA customers. The professional service agreement has been executed to initiate the SCHIP application process. So, and there is no cost or rate impact to Clean Energy Alliance. And the recommendation that we'll be asking for is to adopt resolution number 2025-022. And what that resolution will do is, one, approve the battery bonus program rates, as I described earlier, and approve the professional services agreement with Participate Energy for the battery bonus program, and authorize the CEO to execute all necessary documents, and to ratify the professional services agreement with Haven Energy Services Incorporated for the Battery Bonus Connect program. I'm open for
Thank
questions.
you. Appreciate the presentation. As this is a public hearing, I'd like to check to see if we have any speakers on this item.
No speakers, Chair.
No speakers. All right. Well, I'd like to put it over to board for comments and questions. I just want to say I do appreciate the program because I know there will be a lot of people that want to make those links between their solar and having more battery storage for those different times of day and different usages. Member Becker.
Yeah, thank you, Rob, so much for the presentation. It
Thank
might
you.
be your first time presenting for us, is it? I don't know, but anyway, good job. I just was curious about what kind of assurances we would have that the batteries would not be subject to tariff increases in the future, or, I just wonder about that. Seems a little uncertain.
I'll go ahead and handle that question. Thank you, Board Member Becker. I would say at this point, there's no assurance that the tariff situations or tariffs from suppliers might not apply in the future. We are seeing suppliers modify their offerings. There are batteries, for example, that are, well, I won't name them, but there are batteries that are manufactured not exclusively overseas. So those are options that all the installers are looking at. However, there are batteries that do have components, at least components, that are affected by higher tariffs. Those have been factored in, and we expect, for example, on the solar or the Battery Bonus Connect program, that the SCHIP funding will be sufficient to cover those increased costs. So there's no assurance at this point. We can't control what the tariffs may or may not do, but suppliers are looking at other options. So I think that's going to be expected, and we'll see that with our two providers in this program.
But if someone signs a contract, they can be assured that what the rate is, let's say it's 115, that hopefully doesn't change over their 20-year contract.
My expectation would be that the supplier would not enter a contract unless that product was already in the country and not subject to tariffs. So we would expect the supplier to moderate or watch out for those kinds of potential impacts and expect them to offer the price at which the contract was signed.
Okay, very good. Thank you.
Thank you for those questions. I had one question before I check with the rest of the board. And do we know the demand for this particular program? I imagine we have captured, how many customers are solar customers, right? And perhaps all of them are interested in a new battery, but do we have any number on that?
Thank you, Chair Melendez. There are two factors for the Battery Bonus Connect program. We know that there are a significant number of people who are eligible, but we only have, or the state only has so much funding in the SCHIP program. So our goal is to market and try to get our customers access to that piece of the program. The second piece, we've estimated how many solar-only customers we have in our territory. And so what we're trying to do is really market directly to those customers to actually get them to enroll in the program. So with regard to a specific number, no, I couldn't tell you how many have interest. The marketing is ongoing right now.
Okay, I appreciate that approach. Any other questions? Member Spellich?
I have two questions. First one is that state funding basically federal funding, or is it already paid to the state and the state's willing to disperse it?
It is currently already state funding, so it is not subject to any federal restriction at this point.
Because I know a lot of people that were still expecting their January rebates on heat pumps haven't gotten them yet. So because those are federal money cloaked as state money. The second one is I'm curious, will customers have a choice of name brands of batteries, or is there a limited selection?
Thank you, board member. The S-Chip Connect program that we're working with Haven is that the battery that they are using is the Franklin battery. The battery bonus system currently has the Tesla Powerwall, but we are actively working with our channel partners to expand the offerings of product.
Okay, Vice Chair?
Thank you. So going off that question, what type of, I'm not sure if you mentioned, what type of batteries are they that we're looking at? For the Battery Bonus Connect, thanks for the question, Board Member Garcia. Battery Bonus Connect is a Franklin battery. But I mean, what kind of, what's the, do we do?
They are lithium phosphate battery, lithium ion phosphate.
Okay, the
Yeah.
ones that we've been essentially the
Right.
typical main.
Yes.
Wondering, and then is there any indirect costs for non-users that, can we see an expectation that they're gonna have to like subsidize or anything like that? I don't anticipate that, but.
That's a good question, Board Member or Vice Chair Garcia. Yeah, got to get used to that. We don't anticipate any unintended cost shifts to any other customers. That doesn't seem to be a part of this, especially with the net energy metering revisions to NEM 3.0 right now, which was in part attempting to modify or prevent any cost shifts to non-solar customers. So at this point, this actually will increase grid reliability. So to some degree, there may be some benefit, maybe not a direct cost benefit, but some benefit to other users that don't have solar. Yeah, right. Less demand on the grid and less subject to rolling or public safety power shutoffs or other blackout events.
Any other comments? Member?
In regards to the rate, how is it compared to other territories, or is it standard across California?
Thank you for the question, Board Member Figueroa. Are you speaking of the rate, the battery cost?
Correct.
That I would probably have to ask them about. We do know that the companies that have been selected actually work in other territories, and we've compared the programs, and they're similar. But I will be happy to check with them and get back to you on that.
Good questions, Board Member Nunez?
Thank you. I have a follow-up regarding the cost. This is a great program. I think it might be cost prohibitive for some of our families, some of our residents. Are there any possibilities for funding that we might be able to go after to possibly waive or reduce further some of this cost?
Thank you, Board Member Nunez. Can you clarify when you said maybe cost prohibitive? Because those who are income qualified for the Connect program, there is no cost for the battery. So for them, there's no cost. And the expectation is the use of the battery will allow them to further reduce their bill by shifting the use to the battery during higher times of use and also not paying delivery charges. So that's for them. The other program, the battery bonus program, which is the regular retail battery, what what they have available to them is also the same potential cost reduction based on time of use shifting as well as not paying delivery charges. So I'm not sure if that answers the question.
It does, and I think I misunderstood about, so thank you for that clarification. So that helps me.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Good discussion. Any other comments? All right, so seeing this is a public hearing, I will go ahead and make a motion to close the public hearing and to adopt the resolution for the battery bonus program.
I'll second.
Thank you. We'll go ahead and vote.
Can I just clarify? I want to make sure, I'm sorry, that motion did include adopting that resolution, correct? That had
Yes, ma'am. Mhm.
the rates and then the two agreements. Okay, thank you. Board Member Figueroa,
Aye.
Board Member Nunez,
Aye.
Board Member Becker,
Yes.
Board Member Spellich,
Aye.
Board Member Bhat Patel,
Aye.
Vice Chair Garcia,
Yes.
Chair Melendez.
Aye. Great, thank you. That passes. Now we can move on to new business, starting with a regulatory update from Keys and Fox. Thank you.
I'll go ahead and introduce Chair and Board. You know Tim Lindell from Keys and Fox. It's been a very busy time of the year on the regulatory front. I'll let him give you an update.
Yeah, thanks very much, Greg. Chair Melendez, Vice Chair Garcia, members, nice to see you all again in person. So today we are going to discuss 3 different proposed decisions that are currently outstanding at the Public Utilities Commission. And then I'm just going to give you an FYI quick update on a new application that SDG&E filed on May 15th. So we're back to our wonderful circles that everybody knows and loves, because we're going to talk about power charge indifference adjustment rates, PCIA rates. The first proposed decision is in a rulemaking that is intended to reform how these PCIA rates are set. As my colleague Jake Schlesinger mentioned last month, the current rulemaking, the current track of that rulemaking is focused on the second equation on the bottom there and the third circle over, the forecast RA adder. The purpose of that adder is to estimate the value of the capacity that sits in SDG&E's generation portfolio right now. The way that PCI rates are calculated is you take that value of capacity, you add it to the circle on the left, that's the value of renewable energy, and then you add it to the circle on the further left, that's the value of energy in the utilities portfolio. Those 3 together make up the market value. You compare that to the market cost and that equation on the top, and you get the indifference amount PCI rates. You may recall us discussing this earlier this year. If the RA adder goes down, as it does as a result of the proposed decision, then the market value of SDG&E's portfolio goes down, which means the indifference amount goes up and PCI rates will go up. That's the background. So unlike energy, capacity does not have a transparent market where it's traded. It's traded bilaterally between load serving entities. So in order to calculate PCI rates, the commission has to come up with a way to say, well, what's the market value of this capacity portfolio? And the way that they do that is they submit 3 data requests to Clean Energy Alliance and other load serving entities over the course of the year. They say, what are all of the transactions that you transacted for capacity? Everybody reports that into Energy Division at the commission, and the commission determines what the RA adder is for that year. What happened last year was that the commission implemented a new capacity framework, a new obligation called Slice of Day. That implementation made a lot of load serving entities, mainly utilities, a little nervous about whether they were going to be able to comply or not. So they held on to much of their capacity. That essentially meant that there weren't as much trades, there weren't as many transactions, as many deals in order for the commission to calculate what the market value of capacity is going to be. That made the commission a little nervous, and the commission came up with a staff report that said it was worried that the benchmark, the RA benchmark, was too high because some high-priced transactions had an outsized influence over the data set that's used to calculate that benchmark. The commission was also concerned that there were certain non-market relevant transactions that were influencing the benchmark. Those are affiliate transactions between a parent and a sub. Swap transactions where two load serving entities essentially trade resources. And sleeve transactions where one company buys a product simply to sell it to another company. It looks like it's two transactions, really should just be one. These details don't matter too much. What this proposed decision does is it goes in and it changes the data that is going to be used to calculate the benchmark, and it changes the benchmark itself. So 4 bullets you see there. The first one, you might recall from a few months ago that the RA benchmark is more complex than it appears on the surface, just like everything tied to the PCIA. So there's actually 3 benchmarks within the one. There's local, there's system, there's flex. The proposed decision collapses those down to 1. That should increase the amount of transactions that are used to calculate the benchmark. It then uses 3-year-old data for the forecasted benchmark and 4-year-old data for the final benchmark. Again, with the idea of increasing volumes, transaction when calculating the benchmark. It eliminates those non-market relevant transactions that we talked about, the affiliates, swaps, and it says if you have a sleeve transaction, we're only going to count it once. Now, we supported 3 out of those 4 bullets. The one that we didn't support is the bullet in bold there. And the reason we didn't support that is because it brings into the data set stale market data. If you're going to sell your house, you look at comps from the last 3 months or 6 months or the last year to get a sense of what the market is for your house in your area. You don't look back 3 or 4 years to figure out what houses were selling for then. That's old market data. That's stale data. So we oppose that proposal. Unfortunately, the commission adopts it in this proposed decision, thinking that it's necessary to increase the number of. As a result of that stale data, PCI rates are going to go up compared to the status quo proposed decision. Not only will this be applied to the forecasted indifference amount that is looking forward to 2026, it will also be applied to the true up of this year's rates, 2025. Recall that we've always looked forward and then we always look backwards when we're calculating PCI. Comments on this proposed decision are going to be due on June 12th. We're working on those now, and the proposed decision may be adopted as early as June 6th. The second proposed decision here is the 2022 ERA compliance case. So, like I said, when we set our PCI rates, we'll be setting them for 2026 next year. That takes place in an ERA forecast case. ERA is ERRA, Energy Resource Recovery. But then we also go back and make sure that the rates that customers were charged during a prior year were calculated correctly. That's called the ERA compliance case. The key question in this particular ERA compliance case, which looked at the record year 2022, is portfolio optimization. What that means is how well did SDG&E do in selling all of the excess capacity that it had? And that matters to you all for 2 reasons. One, you want them to sell as much as they can, put as much as they can for sale, because that keeps the market liquid. That keeps Dan Peckham happy when he's trying to go buy RA football. And then the second point is that if they don't sell that RA, it gets valued as unsold RA, and that increases your PCI rates. The proposed decision on this case is not good. It's poorly reasoned, and it comes up with a ridiculous conclusion that we can't even look at how well they did in selling their excess capacity. It's a pretty glaring error in law and fact. And we just filed comments about an hour ago at the commission that said, Commission, you need to go fix this because we have no other place in which to address those issues. I've never been too quiet before in my life, so I'm guessing that's the issue.
We can hear you, okay.
All right. That's that case. The last proposed decision that we're going to look at is in the resource adequacy case. Now, RA, resource adequacy, that's capacity again. And the key question in this case is transactability. So all of Clean Energy Alliance's capacity obligations are hourly. They're based on hours during each day. But the way that the commission requires us to buy capacity right now is monthly. So if you only need capacity for 6 hours during the month, you have to go buy a whole month's worth of capacity. It's like needing 3 paper towels to clean up a coffee spill, but you have to go buy a 12-pack of paper towels in order to get those 3 paper towels. It doesn't make much sense. There's a lot of waste. So CalCCA worked very hard and put together a proposal to allow hourly transactions to take place in the market. That proposal was supported by almost every party in the case. The main opposition was San Diego Gas and Electric. The proposal would have saved Californians $180 million each year. Last Thursday, the commission issued a proposed decision that denied CalCCA's proposal because they want to study it further. That proposed decision says that there is no current need to adopt this proposal at this time. That's a frustrating conclusion given the affordability crisis that all Californians are facing right now. CalCCA is working on comments on that proposed decision. Those are due the day before the PCI OIR on June 11th. Lastly, SDG&E did file on May 15th its ERA forecast case. That is the case that will set PCI rates for next year. You can see the next steps in that case and how this case will evolve over the course of the year. On the slide there, the point of interest here, what makes this case unique, is that the October update, so they have all their testimony, they projected what their rates are going to be in May, and then they update all of that for more recent market activity. That October update is going to include this new benchmark that the commission is adopting in the PCIA OIR rulemaking right now. So we'll have a new benchmark, new methodology going into place in October, which is sure to impact the PCI rates that your customers will be paying starting on January 1st, 2026. That was a lot.
Thank you, Tim. That was
Any details
great
I can make
presentation.
clearer.
Well, I'll just say that I really appreciate the reporting on this and also CalCCA's efforts to, maybe make modifications that could save taxpayers and be less of a burden to our organization. So hopefully we have a good ruling there. And any comments from the board? Concerns here? Thank you for following this. Really appreciate it.
Thank you.
All right.
Well, good news next time.
Yeah, always better.
I'll work on that for sure.
Thank you. Great presentation. Okay, now we'll move on to our final item, which is item 8, to review proposed Clean Energy Alliance fiscal year 25-26 budget. And-
Button is hard to push. Can you hear me? Great. So this meeting is the first of 2. This meeting will cover our draft budget, proposed budget for next year, and an outlook, 5-year, 4 more year outlook for through 2030. We're encouraging comments or questions from the board that can inform the final budget that we would present for approval at the June meeting. This first slide is, and I also apologize in advance for many spreadsheets and some of the numbers are a little small. This is a view of projected performance through the end of June. It was as of March 31 financials, which is our most recent financial close. The left column is year-to-date actuals through March 31. So we had a change in net position of $33 million through that period. Our forecast through the end of the year, and it's preliminary, is to be at 31.5 million, which is the first red circle. That is slightly below our budget for the year of 33.3 million, which would result in a unfavorable variance of 1.8 million, although positive change in net income of 31.5 million. That would be after 3 successive years of negative change in that position. So positive financial performance for the year. The next page is a summary of some key observations. I'll jump there and then come back if necessary. The key observation is the current forecast is, as I mentioned, just to end the year with 31.4 million, which is 1.9 million below budget. There are several likely positive upsides that could improve the outcome to better than the budgeted level, but those will remain to be seen. The current forecast is to end with positive $14.5 million of net position, and as I mentioned, after 3 successive negative years. Revenues in the second half of the year were lower than expected. The full year is going to be estimated $8.8 million below budget. The most significant contributor to that is that we had much lower customer usage than expected during the middle of the day than we had budgeted. Much higher solar adoption in this territory than we anticipated, and which is a good thing from the environment and solar standpoint, but provides less revenue because there was less billing to customers. Our energy expenses, question? No. Our energy expenses are expected to be almost $7 million below budget. As you may recall, we built in a $14.4 million contingency to account for the potential of fluctuations and volatility in the market. That $6.9 million below budget is assuming that with the $14.4 million of contingency. So we used up about half of that contingency. The sum of all other expenses is pretty close to budget, immaterial amount differences. And I think this issue has come up a number of times, which is the total operational expenses outside of energy were pretty close to budget and represent 2.9% of the total expenses in the company. Any questions on the look back or forecast for the year?
I think we're okay to keep going.
I'm sorry?
I think we're okay to continue.
So this is a first look at the 25-26 budget. Key assumptions, we're assuming no change in rates from the current level, and there's no change in rates in the assumption through the 5-year projection. I will note that Cal CCA does projections of all of the IOU rates, and they're projecting some significant generation rate declines for SDG&E. Those are their long-term forecast and may or may not happen. But if they do, then we'll be comparing ourselves to lower generation rates, although potentially higher PCIA rates for our customers. We have assumed that there's no load growth, and that is in the number of customers or the usage. That we don't expect much change in the number of customers since the territory is not expanding for the first time in 3 years. However, we often see a minimal load growth from our customers with more electricity usage, and we are, for conservative purposes, assuming no load growth. We have assumed the program's budget will grow over time. If you recall, we budgeted $600,000 in the prior year. We didn't use any of that. But for the next 5 years, our program's budget is assumed to grow from $2 million to $12 million. But the current year budget that you'd be adopting and approving is for $2 million. And staffing and administration, today there are 6 positions. I think there's actually 5 actual employee positions today since one has recently left. We expect to be, as of the end of June, with 10 positions, since 5 are starting next week. And our budget assumes that we will grow to 16 positions by the end of the fiscal year. And Greg will talk a little bit about that at the end of this budget presentation. Some energy cost key assumptions. The forward energy prices appear to be continuing the recent declines. We have to, in order to project energy prices, we have to do a long-term projections of what's going to happen with energy prices. That gets projected all through the full 5-year period. Renewable energy cost prices have declined from recent historical highs that were very high last year, but remain above the historical norms. Similarly with resource adequacy, although they've declined significantly, they're significantly lower than the recent highs that we saw last year. On the contingency, as I mentioned, we had a prior year budget contingency included a 5%. We do have a couple of concerns about that. The recent significant declines make us nervous that they'll continue and that we won't see volatility going back up. We've talked a little bit about this today, and I think it's pretty much the common discussion amongst everyone every day about tariffs and the impact of tariffs. We're already seeing some developers start to talk about raising prices as a result of what might happen with tariffs. So both of those factors make us a little nervous about our forecast. So we're proposing a 10% contingency be included in the budget. That would add approximately $12 to $14 million more over the 5% level annually over the prior outlook and the 5-year plan. I'll show the effect of that on a subsequent slide. In fact, this is the slide. This is again, I apologize for the small font, but this is a look at 25-26 energy expenses and an outlook over the next 5 years. If you look at the bottom line, the forecast of energy through June 30th is $310 million. The preliminary budget for next year is $330 million or $333. That does include a contingency, as I mentioned, of $28.7 million. So hopefully that's not needed, although as you probably well know by now, energy costs are very volatile and hard to predict. And then you can see the outlook over the next 4 years where energy costs aren't expected to increase dramatically, but we have factored in and in fact include a $25 to $28 million contingency. So fairly positive, if you can use that word, from an energy cost standpoint over the next 5 years. This is a picture of all other expenses and the same columns. The forecast through June 30th is $9.3 million. The preliminary budget is $13.5 million. That includes one big item, which is $2 million for programs. So from comparing apples to apples, it's about 9.3 to about 11.4. The biggest increases are in consultants and professional services, which increases about 800,000. And a good deal of that is related to just an increased number of customers throughout the full year rather than what we had last year where we didn't have the full complement of customers for the full year. Excuse me, staffing costs increase $1.2 million as a result of a full year of increased staff. It does assume that operational expenses in total would be 3.9% compared to last year's 2.9%, but without programs, it would be 3.3%. So a slight increase from a percentage standpoint over the prior year. This is a combined 5-year outlook, rate stable at the current levels I mentioned. So a preliminary budget, and this is looking at change in net position, and I'm happy to go through individual line items, but change in net position growing from 35 or 30, almost $36 million to 36 million, 50 million over the next 4 years. I will mention or at the bottom, you can see our projection for days liquidity on hand, which is a measure of our ability to withstand volatility and convince rating agencies to give us a positive or investment grade credit rating. But that grows from at the end of the year, 75 to 110 to 170 to over 200. I will note in that box at the bottom, you can see that our current reserve policy, which states that we will contribute 5% of our annual operating expenses and then on a cumulative basis tracks that. We will meet that 5% every year going forward. However, we don't actually meet the cumulative level over the last few years until late 2027, so into the fiscal year 2028 year. And an investment grade credit rating, the rating agencies are looking for somewhere above 150 days cash on hand or liquidity on hand. for an investment grade credit rating. And we don't achieve that or expect to achieve that in the same kind of time frame, which is late in 2027 based on our current projections. I think that's the last slide, other than the fact that I mentioned that we have a budget timeline. Any
you.
questions?
Thank you, Andy. We'll probably have some questions from the board. I want to check in with public comments.
Yeah, Chair, just wanted to complete, there's one more slide here that's as part of the discussion with the board, wanted to let you know about from the staffing perspective what the budget anticipates. As was reported both in the staff report and as Andy mentioned, the proposed budget allows for 4 new positions in the next fiscal year. That's in addition to the 2 previously authorized by the board in January. So as you may recall, the board authorized 6 positions in January, 4 of which were to be immediately recruited, which we have now done, and the remaining 2 to take place in the next fiscal year. Staff also recommends that one of those 2 positions was an administrative position. So a recommendation, which would be, assuming the board has support, solidified at the next board meeting, would be to separate the executive assistant and clerk to the board into 2 positions. And also to create a senior procurement manager, and not necessarily to fill that position with a new hire, but to provide some organizational structure for the power supply team. And then finally, that we would bring, as I mentioned, the position control listing to the board at the June 26th meeting at the same time with the budget. So we're looking for any thoughts or input you have on that, as well as the rest of the budget.
Thank you. Thank you. And then for public comments?
Chair Melendez, directors of the CEA, thank you for the opportunity. My name is Daniel Dominguez. I'm a Oceanside resident, and I'm also on the CEA Citizens Advisory Committee as the Oceanside representative. First off, a quick comment. I spent almost 40 years in the utility business. And, you know, when it comes to energy markets, I still find myself scratching my head like, huh? So hopefully, you know, I just want to let you know you're not alone. Sometimes it's a very complicated system. The reason I'm here is that, if you'll bear with me 1 second, since I'm on the Citizens Advisory Committee, I had asked the staff for some information on delinquent accounts. And I'd like to say that I'd like to commend staff. They were very quick in providing me the information. So the CEA has about a little over 25,000 delinquent accounts in its service area. And those are 90 days or greater. And so I've asked for some additional information, and they've been very helpful to try to break it down by city as to, you know, how many per city. The total cost is, I think, 11 million for the delinquent accounts, and then another additional few million for the ones that were closed. So the total delinquency is somewhere around $15 million, which is in my book, it's a significant monetary amount. But there's also the human cost, obviously, right? When people get their power shut off, they don't have a refrigerator, you know, they're relegated to canned food, sitting in the dark. So there's the human aspect of it. My comment here is I looked at the budget and I was looking for, I looked under liabilities, where, if there's a line item or where these delinquent accounts are listed, these $15 million. I didn't find it. I'm sure it's there somewhere. So my comment is to recommend that they be more transparent or more obvious because I hate to keep asking staff for information. It's a lot easier for me to look at a budget and see, is this number trending up, trending down? Does it need further attention? And so in closing, I spent 40 years in the nuclear business. And when you know you got a problem, you need information. And the most information you have, the best, because that's how you can solve the problem. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Mr. Dominguez. And I agree with the speaker, and I appreciate staff working with our advisory group as well and reviewing this budget. This is not the last time this will come before us. We'll be hearing on this again soon. And so I'm anticipating in the meantime for us to have more detailed discussions about the budget. But in this initial review, there are a few things that I wanted to touch on and would encourage the board to ask questions and continue discussion. But we now see all of our member cities on board, and we really have a full customer case, and we're not expecting additional load growth. We're really looking to stabilize. And so in that, I just want us to be cautious to not be too quick to expand operations, right? And the next coming budget cycles as we're growing, but to assess and to see where the stable customer base and energy procurement and usage is taking us. I am concerned about some of the variability in energy use. It seems unpredictable, and I again agree with our speaker that it can be complicated, the formulas that we're using to forecast. But in in a positive sense, we do see that energy costs are going down year to year. And so I just would love to check in with Andy about that point and see if maybe you can articulate for us a little bit, why are we seeing energy costs go down year after year within your forecasting?
Well, we're not seeing them go down. We're projecting that they will go down. Some of that, if you look at this slide here, and let's say we take preliminary budget of 333 million and then compare that to the year 27, 28 of 312 million. That's about $18 million, and $16 million of that is in resource adequacy line item. So we've seen resource adequacy be, it's energy purchases, I'm sorry. And energy purchases are based upon, our forecast for energy purchases are based upon publicly available forward price curve projections, and they are published on a quarterly basis. There's some great big companies that produce them. Standard & Poor's is one of the biggest. There's also one from a company called ICE. I'm not sure what the acronym stands for, but we use those projections to project 5 years out, and they project energy costs and energy prices on a monthly basis, so going out 5 years, and we use the most current one that we have, similar to what the IOUs do and what all CCAs do. They all do use it, and SDG&E and project in their projections for rate projections over the next few years use exactly the same kinds of energy price projections. I can tell you for sure that those projections will be wrong. Hopefully they're not too wrong. And hopefully they're more right the closer we get, but while all we can do is use projections that we have. There are other differences. For example, as I mentioned, resource adequacy is projected to go up next year and then go down a little bit the following year. It's a pretty, as the speaker mentioned, projecting energy prices is very difficult, and there are a lot of factors that go into it, and energy prices, if you look at them, and you actually can, because the CAISO shows a has a website, a portal and an app that you can actually track what's happening in energy prices on a minute-by-minute basis. They fluctuate sometimes hundreds of dollars in the matter of course of an hour or two a day, and hundreds of dollars in the matter from a month to month, depending on what happens. So projecting them is very difficult. All we can do is take our best guess, and this is based on our best guess.
Thank you, Andy. I know we're watching it closely. I just would love, hearing more from you on that, especially as we go along, right? So your regular reports are very helpful too. And then my last comment was the reserve amounts. So it's not until 27, 28 that we will have, be kind of compliant with our current policy and percentage, but we're getting there. And what was that percentage of reserves? Once again, was it 35?
It's if I recall, it's I can look it up if you want, but I'm pretty sure it's 5% of current revenues is supposed to be contributed to reserves on an annual basis until we get to 25% of a cumulative 25% of that. And we are not at the 25%. We will achieve the 5% this year, and the projection shows that we'll overachieve it in each of the following years. But because we had 3 years of losses, we didn't achieve the minimum levels in the prior years.
Okay, thank you for that explanation. Let's turn to the whole of the board. Do I see Vice Chair? Member Becker?
I was curious if you had some information for our speaker about the 15 million, where we actually calculate that, and is there trending ups or downs, or have we had a chance to look at that?
Yeah, I don't have the details, and happy to. I mean, I didn't know that I'm not supposed to respond to him, but I'm happy to.
I know. I'm
respond
sorry
you.
to put you on the
No
spot.
problem. I'm happy to respond to you.
Some clarification as to why you're not able to respond, since this item is on the agenda and we have numbers and charts and.
Well, I think we can ask you directly, Andy, if you could give us an explanation of our delinquent accounts.
Yeah, sure. I don't have the details. What I do know is that we can have a bad debt reserve that we accrue every month. It's about $3 to $4 million a year is what we have reserved. We compare our cumulative reserves at the end of as part of the audit each year. We compare our cumulative reserves to what we believe to be the expected bad debt, and we project bad debt based upon the historical metrics of how much was receivables, how much did we collect, how long did it take us to collect them. So sometimes, even though at a point in time, amounts owed may be more than 90 days old, on average, some of those still get collected at a later date. And we adjust our reserves to reflect that. Our reserves are not something that we publish publicly. However, we're not trying to hide it. Our balance sheet that's on our monthly statements that you approve every month show accounts receivable on a net basis, so accounts receivable net of the reserve for bad debt. I'm happy to bring that to the board next time and show the trend and the current status of what the gross number is and the reserve amount is. So, and then compare that to what delinquent accounts, and happy to go into more detail on it.
I think it's great that you're aware of this. It's not like we're dumbfounded by the 15 million. So you're calculating that, and so that is in our budget. So would any of those people be worth talking to about getting the free solar and battery? I mean, could we sort of
Maybe it's a customer service.
customer service
approach
thing
we
or
could
something
take?
like that? I'm sure you don't know, but I'm
Well,
just wondering.
when they're delinquent with CEA, they're also delinquent with SDG&E because our billing goes through SDG&E, and all payments by customers are split between the three categories of gas and electric and CEA charges.
I see.
So when a customer is delinquent with CEA, they're also delinquent with SDG&E. So there's already an effort going on. When a customer gets closed, the account's transferred to us, or at least the amount is transferred to us, and we use an outside service to try and collect, send them to collections. The amount we collect is minimal every month.
Right.
Less than $2,000 or $3,000 a month is what we end up collecting on average. But we're not, by the time the account is closed, they've already closed from SDG&E as well.
Right. Okay. I understand that. Thank you. Forgot about that part. Then also, could you remind me our policy of buying energy into the future? I know we have a certain percentage up to even 5 years from now that we've already purchased, right? Is that on your charts or?
Well, what's included, what we do is hedging is what we call it. And our practice is that we are, and you're going to test my memory, although I could look it up. We try to be, I think it's 85% or so of the next 12 months of energy to be hedged. And then I think it's 60%. And some of this is mandated by our agreement with JP Morgan as well, to have a credit line. And I think they have to be 60% for the following 12 months. And then I think it's 40% for the next 12 months. So some sliding scale of energy that's hedged. Hedging, and it's not, and rarely that we would go out past 3 years on a hedging standpoint. However, we also are starting to sign what are called PPAs, and PPAs are long-term agreements at fixed costs. So those are a form of hedging where we have contracted for some energy or some renewable energy credits or other type of attribute on a long-term basis. So that's a form of hedging as well, though not called hedging. And what we have contracted for is already built into the budget.
Okay.
What we haven't contracted for from a hedging standpoint is not built in, and what's built in is, for example, the 60% in the second 12 months, we're assuming the other 40% is bought at what is the forward price curve or the expectation of what energy costs will be. That's what hedging is supposed to do. When you buy a hedge, if everything's working right in the market, the hedge you buy is at the current cost of energy. And so all we're doing is projecting what we would expect to be hedging at some point later. And the reason we would hedge is because of the volatility that happens and that those forward price curves are not right. We try to lock in prices over on an ongoing basis that we contract or do hedging activities about on a quarterly basis.
Right. Okay, perfect. Thank you for that.
Sure.
For those
And as
questions.
the speaker mentioned, there's many layers of all of this, and it's not a simple process.
Yes, sir. Including, I'll mention that we have secured long-term contracts before, and the price of those contracts have changed under our feet as well. So
That's another
unpredictability and unfairness that happens. Other members, I see, yes, Member Bob Patel.
Yes, thank you. And thanks for the presentation. I know if we could go back to the slide where you talked about where we were below budget for the revenue and below budget for the energy expenses. I just had a couple of questions on that.
This one?
I believe it might have been the one that you were just on, maybe either 25 or 27.
Well, we wouldn't be below budget. These are outlooks, but not below
So I
budget.
think it was the one where you had mentioned we were 8.8 million below budget for revenue and 6.9 million below budget for energy.
Yes, that's right. That's here. What this is a forecast of through June 30th compared to the budget, which is column 3.
Yes. Okay, great. Thank you. So could you, so this is in terms of revenue, especially I guess my question to you is, and I know that you explained it while we were going through it, but in order to really account for that as we move forward, I know it's hard to predict what it'll look like, but especially given, all of the variability of CPI, CCI, all of these different things that, and obviously inflation and tariffs and all of the different uncertainty that we're going to face in the next year or so. And then given that we also have these delinquent accounts where it amounts to 15 million. And when I look at that number of the below budget for revenue and below budget for energy expenses and add that up, that almost brings us, okay, am I misunderstanding?
Yeah,
Okay,
so I'll try to give
okay,
an
yes,
overview.
please.
We were $8 million, or we expect to be, since this is a projection through the end of the year, we expect to be $8.8 million below the budgeted revenue level. When we put the budget together last year, was based on projections of customer usage of $360 million.
Yeah,
And we assume a level of usage by customers in all of the various categories of residential and commercial and industrial. We missed the biggest miss we had, and percentage-wise, it's only about 2.5% off or so. But the biggest miss was that we didn't anticipate as much solar usage in the midday as we are seeing in our territory. So going forward, we have adjusted our load forecast for the next 5 years to account for a much higher solar usage during the middle of the day. So in the follow-on slides, when we show the budget for next year and the outlook for the following year, that's based on a revised look and load forecast of what we expect to happen with that knowledge of high solar usage during the middle of the day. The issue of let me answer the second part, and then you can go back and ask, see if there's any more clarifying questions. The issue of the 15 or $25 million, and I haven't seen that report, so I'm just going by what was discussed here. However, that's on a cumulative basis, so that's over the last 4 years of our customer usage, over 4 years of usage. So the prior year was 200 and something million of revenues. This year was $350 million. The prior year was, I'm going to guess, was $150 million. So over the course of those 4 years, we have accumulated $25 million of delinquent accounts. And some of those accounts should be probably just, and we already have enough reserves to cover most, if not all of that delinquent accounts. So we should be writing that off. And we do in the financial statements, but I'm not sure where that report's coming from. So I need to go dig up where that report came from and what was provided to the speaker, so I understand that what we're talking about.
okay. Thank you for that. I don't think I misunderstood, so I'm glad that we clarified this. No, it's okay, and I'm glad that we talked through it. I think what I heard you say is that as we continue to move forward, our projections are going to anticipate the solar usage. We still did, obviously we didn't factor that in this go around, and that's kind of what I was getting at is as we move forward, and I'm glad we're doing that, we're readjusting. Obviously we still were below budget for that, right? And so that's kind of where my concern is just given the uncertainty of where we're at, wanting to make sure, and I'm so glad that we're going forward, factoring that in. With regards to the issue of 15 million or whatever number, because it sounds like there might be, we're not entirely sure what number that is, but I'm glad to hear it's a cumulative basis. It's not over the course of the last year, because that would be astonishing if it was 15 million in 1 year. So I appreciate that clarification that it's over the past 4 years. I would want us to caution against always dipping into our reserves to have to cover that. That's the one piece that, and I know we have to in order to continue to operate and move forward. And maybe there's something that we would have to figure out as to making sure of striking a right balance of course, we don't want to shut off energy for folks. That's not something I would personally want to do, but it's trying to figure out, and I know we had a similar conversation at the city regarding utilities, was how do we figure out how to get some of those paid in a way that would actually allow for us to meet our numbers. And so I just wanted to throw that out there as some comments as I was hearing those numbers. It is definitely concerning because I wouldn't want that to continue to grow. I mean, even if it is over a course of 4 years, that's a pretty large number, if that is the right number. And I'd want to make sure that we're thinking of ways that as an entity, we can actually not only help folks meet what they need, but also we're doing what we can to continue to provide those services at that level that we would want to provide. The other piece that I just wanted to comment on briefly would be around the positions. I think, you know, I'm excited to see how we've been growing over the course of the last couple of years, especially, and we have such a great staff that's been doing great work. I think maybe Chair, you had mentioned around operations, and please clarify if I misinterpreted what you said, but I too am like, okay, maybe we need to be mindful of how we're growing given where we're at. So I just wanted to also echo those sentiments. And other than that, I'm curious to hear what others have to say, but those were just some of the different things I had that I wanted to point out. Thank you.
Sure.
Great
Just to
discussion,
be,
Andy.
just in case it's not clear, you know, CEA doesn't turn off power to anybody.
No, I know.
We've-
Yeah, yeah,
We don't have any, we've never done it and we wouldn't, we don't have
yeah.
the ability to do that.
Thank you. I see Member Spellich.
So I'm a big fan of growing revenue whenever I can. So I'm curious, you said no load growth numbers, mix, usage, all flat is your assumption. Having said that, I enjoyed combing through the CEO's report and looking at the participation rates, and we had some back and forth on that. You're at about average of 93.5, 94% across all the cities, some cities slightly higher, but all within a really nice band. Is there any sort of outreach that's planned to the opt-outs to opt in, or does that make any sense to do? And is there any sort of outreach on people that are in certain tiers to move up to another tier? And does that make sense to do? Or given the size of your organization, is the dollar cost to mount something like that not worth the increase in the revenue?
Good question.
Yeah, thank you, Board Member Spellich. I can handle that. There is no immediate intent to contact opt-outs at this point. I think our operational standard is we'll just try to provide better service, provide better programs, and by attraction, bring those people back in. Typically, the opt-outs, what we see with our statistics from Calpine is that those are customers that are not likely to come back, that they're pretty adamant about their desire to opt out. We have talked about our programs to address people who would like to opt up to the Green Impact, certainly. And we've tried to implement that through our Green Impact Champions program to offer particularly businesses that are interested in doing so, that typically have larger loads that might make a big impact, give them some exposure and credit for doing that. To your later point, that generally speaking, even with that outreach, even if we were to do a wholesale marketing blitz, if you will, you're likely to see little movement in the way of meaningful cost return to CEA. That said, where we are likely to see that is if we get some of our larger load commercial customers to opt up, where we get municipalities, which we've had success doing, opting up, where we get cities deciding that they might want to opt up their default product. That's something that we've talked about at this board in terms of making sure that we can handle that by policy and by being fiscally responsible and making sure we're charging the appropriate amount for that opt-up rate. So in answer to your question, yes, we have taken measures to try to get people to opt up. There's no aggressive procedure or program that gets people, we try to get people to opt down. And there's certainly, at least in my way of thinking, there's no direct attempt to get people to opt back in if they've already opted out. Again, we let our I guess our operations speak to that.
That makes sense. I did notice that I think Solana Beach and Del Mar were early members of the CEA. And so Solana Beach and Del Mar, we have about 3% that are in the 100%. So it looks like sometimes people, the longer they're in, the more they might be likely to want to. So you have a lot of the newer cities that are sort of in the 0.5% at the 100%. So I just thought that might present, you only missed by 2% on the top line.
Yeah.
And there's a lot of people still out there that could recapture. That's the only reason I brought it up, but thank you.
And appreciate that. And obviously the city of Vista also elected to opt up its municipal accounts. And currently the city of Carlsbad is reviewing that and likely intends to opt up later in this year to comply with their climate action plan.
And board members, Spellets, one other comment you made was about the no load growth assumption. The standard that we actually believe is that the load growth actually will be about 1.8% on an annual basis. However, from a budgeting standpoint, we're assuming no load growth. But we do expect that people use more electricity over time and more electric cars and more solar going in, and a lot that the use of electricity will continue to expand in the territory anyway.
Well, and it made me curious. Do you see, is there a variability in the sense of some people do opt out even if there's a penalty to do it, or you're just seeing this as possible incremental growth as you go, especially on your commercial customers? Is that what I'm hearing?
I think it's a factor, kind of all things considered. So we do see people still opting out from time to time. And we also see new businesses and new residents moving in. And so with every new projects that's developed, we're going to see a potential for new customers and a little bit of growth. 1.8% is not a huge amount, but it is kind of the anticipated expectation. I think there's offsets both ways. I kind of believe that load will tend to increase over time at a modest rate. And that's just my personal feeling, but we have seen it stay pretty flat from time to time. Where we have made adjustments, as has been spoken about, is adjusting our load forecast to make sure that we're accounting for that. What we didn't anticipate was a pretty strong rooftop solar usage during the middle of the day, which is I think it's something CEA can be proud about, that a lot of the member agencies and their customers have rooftop solar, and that's really, as well as schools and businesses, we've really seen that impact our load forecast, where we've been long in our positions during the middle of the day. And so we're adjusting that forecast to make sure that in the coming months, when we go out for hedges, we're not overbuying our energy, which will ultimately save our customers money.
Thank you for that discussion. Vice Chair?
Thank you for, so I do want to echo what the colleagues have said about being cautious with growth and not overly ambitious. So I do appreciate that. I'm not the only one that has that feeling. The other thing is that you all have dollars needs to be addressed somehow, because whether we're together, whether putting on payment plans, reaching out, it has to be addressed, because essentially the rest are subsidized with delinquency. So I think that's really important.
Thank you. The other thing that I do want to mention is, can you go back to the slide that talks about the contingency cost?
Going forward,
we've been on this for a while, so I don't remember which direction.
this one?
No, I guess going forward, then it would be where you speak, where you show the numbers of the contingency. It's 20. I think this is it right here. Okay. And what was the purpose of the contingency again? Can I just make sure I understood that?
The purpose of the contingency, let's talk about what the purpose was last year. Back to Chair Melendez's comment about how do you predict energy prices, what we do is there's a dozen or more things that we do are projecting RA costs, renewable energy costs, going out, and and since we make so many forecasts and they're based on outside factors and the impact of economy and weather and tariffs and political changes and everything changes, the energy costs change on an hour by minute basis, and predicting them out for a year, much less, or even 5 years, is very difficult. And so in order to not have a budget that we miss, we have assumed an extra contingency just to, in case we're wrong about what costs are, so that we don't miss our budget. So this last year, we had a contingency of about $14 million. There's $3 million, that's the left column. There's $3 million left of contingency on the last 3 months of the year, so about $1 million a month. But the actual costs are up in the first 10 lines were higher than we expected, because we were wrong on a couple of things. RA costs were higher than we anticipated for most of the year. Renewable energy costs were higher than we anticipated for the most of the year, and so on and so forth. So all we're trying to do is to make sure that we have a predictable budget and that we have more certainty that our rates that we're charging customers are sufficient to cover our costs in the out years, even if we're wrong by 10%.
So we went from, you said 14 million, and then we're going to 28 million?
It was roughly 14 million last year at 5% contingency the board approved, and we're proposing that we increase that contingency to 10% this year, which is double of the,
Right.
so it's $28 million. It would have been $14 million under the prior 5% contingency practice.
Okay. And so essentially you just doubled the number to get 10%. And I'm guessing this is variable. We could change it year to year if we find it appropriate. We're not stuck on the 10%.
If our projections are right in the top, the preliminary budget of 69 million and 157 and 8 and 65 and 3, if our projections are right, we're going to be $28 million under budget because we won't need that contingency.
Right. And so what would happen with that?
It's only if we're wrong that we might use that
And
part
what
of it.
would we do with the surplus?
It goes into our overall reserves. We don't spend it just because we only spend what we have to spend in reality. So it'll just go into reserves instead of having going forward here. So the preliminary budget shows a change in net position projection of our budget of $35.8 million. If we don't need any of that $28 million contingency, then our change in net position will be positive $60 million. And then we'll be closer to our days liquidity on hand that we want to get to, and we'll be closer or faster meeting our reserve policy and potentially in a position where this board can consider whether we want to reduce rates or not, and our rates are higher than
So
we need
once
to
we
be.
hit the reserve, then that's when we could consider
Yeah, right.
dropping off the contingency.
Yeah, the board could consider higher or lower rates today. Our recommendation is that we leave rates where they are until we build up the reserves to a level that is, one, we're meeting our reserve policy, but two, we're in a position to get an investment grade credit rating. And if the board decided that wasn't important, we could reduce rates now. But if the board agrees with us that that's important, we should wait until we are closing in on that and then consider what to do with the excess.
And that leads to the next question. So we're looking at days liquidity on hand. If we're looking at, I believe the number was 150 days, right?
There's no hard and fast rule, but that's a general guideline for what the rating agencies look for at companies like ours, about 150 days or more.
So once we hit the 150 days, would it be the point of exceeding that to days liquidity on hand to 170? I could see that, but 207, 269, I mean, why are we so ambitious on that number?
Well, we're not, the 207 and 269, we're not being ambitious on the calculated numbers based upon our projections over the next 5 years of what do we think energy costs will do, what do we think revenues will do. And if they all happen the way we think that we're projecting they're going to happen, we'll be in a position, we'll have a fairly high days liquidity on hand. When it gets to be above 150 to 180 days, the board's going to start we're going to want to have a discussion about, do we want to lower rates? Do we want to spend more on programs? Do we want to continue to grow reserves because of the energy markets have been highly volatile? We're not really in that position to have that discussion until we get to that point. But this was kind of a look at 2 or 3 years out, giving the board some guidance about when we probably will be in a position to do that.
So are we looking essentially, are we trying to get to that reserve number and the liquidity on hand as soon as possible? So then we could decide, I mean, not as soon as possible, we could do it, next month if we want to shoot up rates, but aggressively so that we could then readjust as soon as possible. I mean, am I translating this correctly?
Well, aggressive is, I wouldn't agree with aggressive. I do think that there should be a target, and I think that the sooner we get there, it would be nice if we were there today and had an investment grade credit rating, because investment grade credit ratings have the benefit of typically translating into lower costs with developers and with new projects and with power purchase agreements we're doing and with hedge transactions and with lower collateral requirements for energy that we're contracting for. So that has a lot of financial benefits to the organization to get there, but plus some comfort that this board and that is managing the organization to be able to with that kind of, the reason that the credit ratings give an investment grade credit rating to companies that have that kind of liquidity and amount of cash available is because they believe that means that the organization is stable and able to withstand the volatility that's inherent in a business like this. When we get there, and I don't think aggressive is the right word, because you're right, we could double rates today and get there twice as fast. That's not in our customers' best interest. But the sooner we get there, gives us the comfort that we can get benefit of a better negotiating leverage with outside sellers, and we can get it with an investment grade credit rating, and it gives us the comfort that we can withstand what sometimes is intense volatility in the energy markets.
Okay, that's it. Thank you so much. Appreciate it.
If I could, Vice Chair and rest of the board, just as a reminder, we set our rates to be, there's a couple objectives we keep in mind: to cover our costs, to meet our reserve policy, to meet our covenants with JP Morgan on our line of credit. We're required to have certain days liquidity on hand, as well as cover our costs. So yeah, I agree with Andy about, we don't necessarily want to be aggressively moving forward towards that goal. We want to be also cost competitive. So that's our objective, is to provide cost competitiveness, to cover our costs, to set aside our reserves and our reserve policy, all of which lend us to this sort of long-term approach where we get to a solid financial footing and become attractive to credit rating agencies, which, as Andy said, gives us a competitive advantage or competitive edge, if you will, on our energy costs long-term and hedge contracts. So this, to me, I've always been fiscally conservative in whatever we do. We want to be smart about this. We want to build in contingencies where necessary, and we want to make sure that we're not overshooting the mark or undershooting the mark, that we're charging rates that are competitive and not impacting our customers negatively. And so this outlook is an estimate. You know, as was stated earlier, energy markets are volatile, and so we want to be careful about this. But our recommendation at this point is yes, we want to continue to build that reserve, get to that target, and that's the point at which we'll have many options for the board, which is, do we establish a rate stabilization fund to help decrease rates? Do we add more to programs? We had that discussion at the last board meeting or two about programs and being cautious about, let's not start spending this money just yet. And so I'm looking at this forecast, and I guess I won't say excited, but I'm encouraged by the numbers that we're seeing. And I think that getting to that stability is of course what any agency wants to do, is to get that strong footing. And so I think you guys have made decisions so far that have led us here. So I just appreciate that. I appreciate the work that Annie's done. And again, I'm encouraged by this outlook. I'm cautiously encouraged because we just don't know what tomorrow brings. As we saw last year, energy costs for the price we pay was exorbitantly went high for renewables, went really high for resource adequacy. Now they're back down to somewhat historic levels, but still above where they were, say, 2 years or 3 years ago. So again, we're just taking each step cautiously, I'd say.
Thank you. Thank you for the discussion. Yes, Member Nunez.
Thank you, Chair. I have two procedural questions. First of all, thank you for this discussion. This is really informative and helpful for me on the item. I also want to thank Citizens Advisory member Dominguez for bringing up for his public comments and bringing up the issue about the unpaid accounts. So just a couple of procedural questions. My first one is for our council. The comment earlier from Andy about not being able to respond to the public comments, I just want to make sure for my own benefit and for the benefit of our residents and the public, it's my understanding that obviously if an item is on the agenda is subject to public comment and for us to consider and discuss. And so I want to make sure that that's my understanding is correct. And as I mentioned, for the benefit of the public. So that's my first question.
To that, Board Member Nunez, decorum suggests that the members of the public speaking on any item to direct their comments and questions to the board. For staff, we are awaiting board members to ask us to respond to them. So I believe that's what Andy was referring to. We are not to interrupt board members as they're having that discussion. But if a member of the public asks a question and the board, one of the board members wishes for staff to actually respond to that, we will await your question and we will respond.
Thank you for that. I think that's very helpful for our residents, for the public to hear so that we understand. And my follow-up question, I am also concerned about the unpaid accounts and really, I think the avalanche that might come our way, considering that a lot of our residents are unable to pay rents and a lot of their necessities. So I think it's a real issue that we're going to have to be talking about probably in the near future. The other question that I have is in regards to transparency. It's very important to me. And if I heard our speaker correctly, he mentioned that he didn't know, in looking at our current budget, where to locate this in the actual budget. And so when I hear that, that's concerning to me. So I do have that same question. So where would I go? Where would anybody in the public go to find this information in our current budget?
Board Member Nunez, are you asking about delinquent account information? If that's what you're asking for, are you asking for a bottom line number that's factored in? I guess my answer is that we don't track this information or provide this information in the budget. This is in many ways, and sadly, the cost of doing business. Any municipal government that relies upon fees for service, whether it be sewer, water, electricity, we factor in a delinquent account amount, part of which is the contingency that we've been discussing to make sure that we're accommodating for those accounts that don't get paid. But in terms of a number that we specifically address as a rearage payment, that's just not something we put in our budget. It's just, I think contingency might be the best place to look for it. I would also stress that some of the numbers that were provided by Mr. Dominguez, again, they're additive. So you have your 31 to 60 days delinquent, you have your 61 to 90, and then you have your 90 plus. And so they overlap because customers can be part of both of those, all of those groups, or none of those groups. So the overall impact, represents about, 5% of the overall revenue budget in total. But they're not all not being paid. The closed accounts only total 15,152. So the assumption is that the rest of those delinquent accounts are still working through payment plans or getting their bills paid. So as a percentage of total accounts, we're not seeing a lot of closures. And again, it's something we are interested in tracking. I don't know if that answers your question well, but again, this is not something that we necessarily put as a line item in the budget. Rather, it's something we expect, anticipate as just a matter of course that some people in our communities are going to have trouble paying their bills and are going to be delinquent. Relatively few will have their accounts closed.
This is certainly helpful for me. So I think the first part of the question for me is really, so if Mr. Dominguez or I wanted or anybody wanted to find this information. So for me, number one is it accessible? Is it available anywhere? It's number one. So if we do have these contingencies built into, is that information also available for anybody that would want to see that? So my question is not necessarily about the numbers, but just that specific assumption that's built into that budget. And so then for me, then the other question is that something that, is it out of the ordinary? Is that normal? Or what steps would somebody then take to get the information?
As far as the information goes, that would be through a public records request. We handle any requests by even members of the board or our advisory committee as PRAs. The standard typically is if we have that document and that record available, we provide it. In this case, we do maintain an aging report. We do get that information, and as long as we're not violating any confidentiality by disclosing account information, or if the number of accounts is below a certain threshold, we can provide it, and we did so in this case. The most recent request has been to break these aging reports down by member agency. That's not a report we produce or track. This is helpful in a global sense to give us an idea of what the specter of the delinquent account total number is and what the cost is. We're happy to try to formulate that information, and this document now is a public record. So if somebody wants to request it, they would request it through our clerk, and we can provide it. It is not something that I'm aware that we typically post on our website. I don't know that any agencies do, but it is available upon request.
Thank you for that. That's very informative. I do have one other just comment that I agree with board member Bat Patel, in the sense that I'm also thinking about potential options, working through our member cities to see what might be available for our residents that are possibly at the risk of losing their electricity. And that's something that I'm willing to continue to pursue. Like, for instance, just sitting here thinking that a lot of us have allocated funds or CBDBG funds, and that's, I think, something that we might be able to look at, possibly bringing in some of that funding to help our residents or making it available. So thank you for this.
Thank you. Any other comments?
Yeah.
Member Figueroa?
Yeah, so this is more for the operating budget. I saw that we are increasing communications and outreach by 36,000. Based on the True North survey that was done, how much of those efforts are going to address some of the concerns that were shared on that survey in regards to, at least what I saw, for affordability being one of the top concerns? What does the communications and outreach efforts look like going into this fiscal year?
Well, we will be, Board Member Figueroa, we will be bringing back a contract for our marketing consultant at the next board meeting, and we are attempting to expand the services under that agreement. We are looking at ways to expand the outreach. We have beyond social media and internet-based outreach, we're looking at regular envelope mailers, for example, on our solar or battery bonus programs that were just approved tonight. We're looking at physical mailing as an option. We are looking at the possibility of bill inserts, although that's fairly limited per rules that SDG&E operates under. And so right now we're exploring exactly how we're going to try to reach. I know this board was very specific in our strategic plan effort to ask us to look at ways to reach those harder to reach communities, and whether there's a digital divide or a language barrier, we're hoping to provide more outreach there. I will say that two of our new employees coming on board are Spanish speaking as well. And so that will help in that effort. We're open to ideas. Part of what we're trying to do with our member agencies is request information on organizations in their community that might help with that outreach. And so one of the reasons I think I know we're asking for additional staff support is this takes effort and it takes people. So rather than rely wholly on our marketing consultant, we're going to be using our newly hired programs and key accounts people to help with that effort, as well as the positions that we hope to fill in the next fiscal year. So there's no direct specific items. They all contribute to the whole in terms of how we approach this, but we are looking at a more sort of ground-based approach rather than a technical one, because we acknowledge that for some social media, internet-based communications may not be the way to approach them. So looking a little bit old school in that regard, but I think in engaging with community-based organizations and other partners inside each community is going to be the way we approach it.
So information will be provided in English and Spanish.
Yeah.
And then for
Excuse
that,
me,
yeah.
one more context about that. This is the slide you were looking at. It shows about $40,000 more, or 26, I guess, $33,000 more. Last year's budget, actuals included about $40,000 more in printing and postage related to our expansion to our new territories and everything. So we won't be spending a lot of that, as much money on that. So this increase from 373 to 409 is actually more than that 33,000 that's showing. It's closer to $75,000 more.
And that doesn't factor in, you said you're bringing in 2 staff, so that's not a personnel, you're not including personnel to
Personnel is
communicate
not
with
included in there,
correct?
yeah.
So this is just advertising, marketing,
Right.
budget line item, okay. And you did mention consultants, so this will be an effort taken on by CEA staff and not the consultants? Consultants will be driving the strategic approach?
It's going to be a combined approach. So our consultant, Pepe Smith, has been engaged with us for quite a while now. They have quite a bit of familiarity with how we want to approach things and have good ideas. But the additional staff it's going to be a combined effort. So the staff we're bringing on, the staff we hope to bring on in combination with our support marketing communications consultant, it's going to be a combined effort. So it'll be both.
And just going to the survey, how is that going to be utilized as a tool to address some of the challenges that were raised throughout the survey?
Yeah, we're still pouring through all the results there that we provided to you as an attachment to this staff report. And we're going to be clearly using that to target some of this, our direct communications as well as our electronic communications and physical communications. Again, we're working through this. That's a lot of data to go through, but what I can say is it will inform our approach to not only rolling out energy programs, but for us to learn potentially better how to reach the customers and communities of concern or communities that are just harder to reach. So we're still developing all that, and when we have a firmer idea, we can certainly report back and report back on our, as you know, our work plan has key performance indicators. So hopefully there'll be part of this will be tracking how we've done in that regard. Remains to be seen, but we've heard the direction from the board.
Okay, thank you.
All right, any further comments from the board? Thank you all for that discussion. As just a closing thought, I really see that we're at the precipice here as all of our member cities are on board. This is, really our first, our next budgeting stage now that we have a fully onboarded membership. And we see high rates of enrollment. We expect that there will be delinquencies at times, but I appreciate that we're building that in. And I want to reflect on one thing you said, Member Spelich, about how we want people to be using more energy, right? We don't want to miss out on those revenue opportunities. But I really do see that there's that balance, right, of wanting to people to use more energy, but the renewable energies, right? And I do absolutely. And exactly. I think we have a revenue recovery opportunity here where not only regarding the delinquent accounts, but also what you recommended for customer opportunities for opting up. And so maybe, I can get with you offline, Greg, and, the board can work on this to try to identify what are the real costs associated with that revenue recovery. And where can we get, the most bang for our buck in that? So I really appreciate this whole board. I'm seeing everyone as being very motivated during this transition time where we are finding ourselves getting our footing and greater stability, more credit opportunities, and just a more stable offering for our customers and our constituencies. So really appreciate everybody's oversight on this, and of course our Community Advisory Committee and staff's dedication on this. Greg, can you remind me when we'll next be hearing this?
Yeah, so the budget will come back to you in the June meeting, June 26th.
Okay, June 26th, fantastic. Well, I look forward to that. Any other comments and direction for staff at this time? All right, well, I really appreciate everybody's comments. That would be the final item for us today. We don't have to take a vote on that. It's just informational and review. And do we have any requests for future agenda items from the board? I don't see any. So our next meeting will be June 26th here in the city of Oceanside. We are adjourned. Thank you.